So for those of you that have watched one of the webinars previously and or have worked in the system previously, we're going to start from the standpoint of where we left off last night, which is that we had created a schedule and the events. So for the moment, I'm going to re-go over the creating an event specifically so that we have an event for tonight to work from. So to start with, I'm going to go into my season management into events. And then in events, I am specifically going to work in this schedule here, the Dakota Track walkthroughs. And I'm going to click into that schedule by clicking on the total events and then click add an event. I'm going to add an event on the 13th is a good date at this point. You always put a title on your event, any descriptive information you want, your pit open times, gate open times, hot laps racing, and then selecting your classes. So obviously that is a very quick overview of what we talked about last night with adding those events into your season. From season management, you can click into an event and then go to race management from that event specifically, which is what I'm going to do here. In general, you will likely be able to just hit the race management button over here on the left-hand side or race management right from the center of the dashboard. The thing to keep in mind with that is it's going to take you to the first non-completed event. So that is why in my case, I'm specifically going into an event since the next non-completed race date that has not passed on the schedule yet. I should rephrase that. So this is going to be where everything starts on your race night. The very first options here you're going to be looking at is your pill draw and transponder options by class. Depending on your race setup and what your race night looks like, this will change for every group of people, and it could change by class. So my best suggestion here is going to be to take a moment at some point and just look in at all the different options. For a lot of the asphalt stuff, I've found one of two options is probably going to work best. So no pill draw in the cases where you go qualifying to feature and there's no specific lineup for your qualifying. In the cases where you have a specific lineup to your qualifying that is based off of hot lap sessions, I have found that your best possible option is the at check-in auto draw after driver selection. Specifically, what that one's going to do is as I'm choosing my drivers that are entered, it's going to give them a pill number. In the case of most of those asphalt tracks that are using the hot lap sessions to set up their qualifying order, that pill draw means absolutely nothing. All it's there for is that our system needs to know a way in order to pull all of the drivers into your hot lap session to start with, and it does that via the pill draw. It's a very simple, quick item. Transponders, 99.9% of the time, I always tell everybody to just leave the allow rentals option on. All that does is add a checkbox that you can use during your driver entry to mark who you have rented transponders to. Even if you don't rent transponders at all at your track, you require them to bring them, etc., you could use that checkbox for another purpose. Keeping an idea of who you need to get paperwork from, maybe they owe you some money for something, etc. It's just a good option. It gives you another place that you can use to help track something. And then for all of those options, once you figure out what makes the most sense by class, you would be able to use the save as defaults option. So that when you save this, then from that point forward, anytime you open up a race with that class in it, it's going to have those default options. Again, if you've got like one night that you're doing something different, you just don't save it as a default and you'll be all set and ready to go. And you'll see that each one of the classes you select has got their own setup as you go down. If for some reason your schedule didn't get set up correctly and you ever needed to add a class on a given race night while you're on the fly and trying to keep things moving, you can do that right here. Our race management has a lot of times where it's going to pop up and say, hey, you didn't save. Do you want to save these options? Yes. Get in the habit of clicking save as often as possible, but we do have some safeguards in there as well. If you ever need to add a class, it will give you the options for classes that are already a part of your season setup. So all of these classes are on our season setup. You would never see that many classes. You would only have a smaller number if that ever came up on the fly. The next section we'll jump to is going to be the entries. I'm going to skip past that MRP Live button. We'll come back to that in just a tiny bit. So the driver entry is what I consider to be the absolute most critical piece of the entire race night. If you can get your driver entries right, the rest of your night is generally going to be pretty easy. Driver entries gets easier with time. So starting out here, some of your tracks, those that have not used MRP in the past, those that are very, very new to MRP, etc., are going to have a little bit longer of a process than those that have used it previously, but it's not a difficult process. The only thing that changes is that those that are new or have only used it for a short period are going to have little to no drivers in this left-hand column. All that left-hand column is every driver that has ever been entered in that class at that track. So in this case, for this 410 wing sprint class, this is every driver we have ever entered in the 410 wing sprint class. You would change classes while you're in your entry list, and this is the truth for all of race management. Anytime you need to change what class you're working in, right up here at the top, and you just select the next class down, or whichever class you need to. If there was 10 classes, all 10 would be listed there. Pretty simple. For those that are brand new or have little to no drivers, if you need to search for somebody or find that driver, all you'll do is hit this search button right here and then just start to type in their name. Using my own name there, I come up, I go ahead and I click on it. The very first box that's going to pop up, especially if you're new, is going to say, hey, this driver has never been entered into this class. Is that correct? The reason that safeguard is there is because, frankly, race nights get busy and it's very easy to make a mistake. You're working in a super late model class and suddenly you weren't paying enough attention and you go to enter a 4-cylinder driver in super late models. It's just to try and help you guys to prevent small problems from happening. So in this case, yes, I want to go ahead and enter Dakota. You're going to type in the driver's car number. If that is their default car number that they have at all times, you'll go ahead and just put as a default. If that's not their normal car number, but that's just the number they're going to be driving for that given night, just don't set that as the default, and then it'll fall back to whatever has been previously set as the default. This was that pill number I'm talking about. For those that don't use pill numbers typically, again, I only do this on those for the asphalt part of the world where you have a qualifying session lined up by hot lap times. And that's all it's for, is just to line up your original hot lap lineup. Owners section is important for two different options. One is that if you have an owner's championship, you obviously need to have an owner in there for an owner's championship. The other reason that you would use it is if you choose to print checks through MRP. In that case, you want to make sure that whatever is in the owner's file or the owner's line here is what legally needs to be on that check in order for them to deposit it. In order to add an owner, all you'll do is just hit this magnifying glass. When you hit the magnifying glass, the first thing that'll pop up is it's going to show you any owners that has ever been entered with that driver across all networks. In my case, I've never been entered with an owner. The next option in the list there will be my owners. That is every owner that has ever been entered under that profile, under that track profile. So in this case, I'm specifically going to use Corey's mom because we use that for a bunch of our demos. And so I'm just going to choose which car I'm driving for Corey's mom. If for whatever reason I'm driving a totally different car, I could add another car. In truth, it doesn't matter a whole lot unless you've got the owner's championships. And in which case, then it does matter, because that's what'll separate them out if you have an owner that has more than one car in your championship, is based on that car number. Click on that. If that's the default that I'm going to be driving for from that point forward, go ahead and set that as a default. Again, if it's just you're driving for that person one night, just don't set it as a default. If you're going to do the printing of checks through us and you need to print it to a specific owner, go ahead and pay out to owner. The next column down here, or the next line down, is the transponder number itself. Transponder number is exactly what it is. Just put your transponder number in here. If that driver has ever been entered somewhere else with a transponder number, it will populate a potential list of options for you. I still suggest verify with the driver and make sure that that is actually the transponder they're using that night, because we do a lot of different things with transponders at a lot of different places, and there's no real consistency. If that is the default transponder that I'm going to be using all year or for a time period, I can go ahead and set that as a default as well. If it is not and it's a rental, I can go ahead and mark that rented box. You can check both of these at the same time. So if you're one of those tracks that does rentals but gives the person the same transponder week after week, you can still mark that as their default and mark it that you've rented it to them. It will not hold that rental check from week to week, though. Just know that. Whenever you're entering them, you'll still want to mark that. That way, if they borrow a transponder from a buddy or something like that, you don't need to be searching for it on that given night. Lineup overrides are pretty straightforward. It's just what it sounds like. So if you mark starting at the back for heat races, when we do a heat race calculation, it'll automatically push them to the back, or starting it back for all races. When we do any of other calculations for lineups, it'll push them to the back of that lineup. Payout amount and payment method, you're not going to see that. It's only on very, very specific profiles. And if you are on one of those profiles, we'll be sure to have talked to you about that because it's a very specific use case. And just always leave this blue check mark for active competitor. There's no real reason not to. Go ahead and click add. That's basically the process for entering drivers in all of your classes all the time. It becomes a very quick process as you're used to it. And then as you're using MRP more and more, and you need to use that filter for the search function less, it becomes much easier since your drivers will be right here on the left-hand column. When they're here in the left-hand column, you can go ahead and just click on any one of them to just add them in. I'm going to add Corey Armstrong. He's also driving for Corey's mom. Not a problem. This is a good example. I have myself and Corey entered with the same transponder number. It will not let that happen. So when I go to click add, it's going to throw a fit at me and just let you know that. That's just to help you guys. Again, we know how crazy it can get when you're doing pill draw and things of that nature. We're just trying to make it a little bit easier on you. The same thing will be true of car numbers. You cannot enter the same person or somebody with the same two car numbers in the same class. So if Corey was driving in multiple classes, that's not a problem. Technically, our transponder system does not go from class to class either. So if Corey was running in two classes and your track allowed it to happen, he could use the same transponder in both classes. That is entirely up to you guys. Again, it's just clicking add. What becomes very nice about this is the filter function works much, much faster than search does as time goes. So what the filter function is it's going to allow you to search for people that have already been entered in your class over time that you know are in that list, but the list gets long and it can get tedious to look through them. So in this case, I'm going to look for Austin. You can look by first name, by car number, or by last name. Very simple, very easy. You'll start to learn tricks for your specific drivers as you go. It can be something where, the name Smith is overly common, so you probably don't want to look for Smith. But, a first name of Guy is not all that common. So maybe you do want to search by Guy, or car numbers, the same thing is very, twos are very common. They're probably not going to help you search down that list a little bit. Same with ones, but like an 85 might be enough to get you down that list. If you do not know their transponder number when you go to enter them, it's not end of the world. Go ahead and click add. If you know it's one that they're going to be bringing you and they own it, just go ahead and set the default and click add. After they bring that number to you, you can go ahead and add it in later. When you add that number in later, you will have to click save before you click on anything else. It's also one of those checks that just, it's very easy to take a quick look through and see on your entry list if you're missing any transponder numbers. No, you will not be able to pull the transponder numbers in from orbits. What we're going to be going through right after the entry list here is actually you're going to be taking the information from here and pushing it to orbits. So it's going to go kind of vice versa from what you're used to looking at. So I'm going to finish entering 10 drivers here, just because that's what the demo of the transponder systems is looking for. All right, so I've got 10 drivers in there. I've got one or two here I'm going to mark as a rental so I can show you guys the transponder rental report later. So once you have your entries done for all of your classes, your next step will be to bounce over to races. The races tab is very, very straightforward. It's just going to be marking down what events are happening on that race night per class. Everything is per class. So in this case, to kind of explain what we were talking about with earlier with the hot laps to qualifying, since that seems to be a very common thing for asphalt racing, and I believe most everybody in here is running on asphalt. So we're going to add a hot lap session, we're going to add a qualifying session, and we're going to add a feature. The biggest thing here that I found kind of throws people off on the asphalt side versus the dirt side is you are not used to referring to things as an A feature or a B feature or C feature, etc. Our system does require you to put a letter with that feature. So your final of the night will be your A feature. The reason for that is it has to do with the way our lineups are calculated. It's looking for those letters to know who it's putting where. In the case of orbits, I found out just last night, you absolutely can put your qualifying lap count in here. I do not ever put the lap count in there for qualifying when using orbit or when using Westfold. I apologize. The reason for that just has to do with the way Westfold expects to see the transponders come across. And right after my first car takes its 2 qualifying laps, it tries to finish the file out. On orbits, apparently there is a setting that does not have that stops that from happening. So once you add all of those races, at that point, the only thing you really need to do is go through your races here and mark who is moving from what event to the next, basically your transfers or how you're getting into each race. So in this case specifically, we're just going to go qualifying. Everybody from qualifying, all 10 cars, is going to the A feature and click save. From this point, my next step on a typical race night is that I'm going to go into my lineups and I'm going to set my initial lineups for the night. So in this case, I'm going to set my hot lap lineup. Again, our system does not care what order they actually physically go out on the racetrack. Our system is just looking to know what drivers it should be expecting in the results from that race. So it needs a lineup to know who's going to be there. That is why I had you to go ahead and do that pill draw that really meant absolutely nothing. So I can calculate a hot lap from pill draw. There's an order. In truth, it does not matter what that order is. You can tell your drivers up front that order is irrelevant. You can send them out however they show up. It's just that you need to have something there. Once I set my initial lineups for the night, my next step then is going to be to go to MRP Live. MRP Live is our system for pulling the data from the transponders and pushing the data to the transponder systems, as well as this is what sets the live timing inside of the MRP app. Second practice as a group qualifying session. In that case, I would just call that, I would do that in my qualifying lineup. So what Kingsport was asking there is that they have a second practice that they do as a group qualifying session. So I would do my hot laps as my original practice session, and then my qualifying session would be exactly what you're talking about there. It's just kind of a difference in name. And that is an item, if you're still a little bit unsure on it, go ahead and follow up with us when we're done, and we'll be happy to walk through it with you and find the best possible solution. So bouncing back to MRP Live for just a minute. So MRP Live is this very, very, very small program. In most cases, I have never seen it take more than about 45 seconds to install on your computer. Maybe you've got a little bit slower computer, it takes a little bit longer than that, but it's a very small program and installs very, very quickly. After you first install it, you will have it pop up with, and go to run it. It will ask you for a couple of items. The first item it's going to ask you is which transponder system you're using. The secondary question it's going to ask you is if you are going to use MRP Live for your lineups. The answer is yes. The last thing you're going to have to set is where you want your files to be saved. If you're on Westhold, there is a specific path, which will be the same for everybody, and that's the C:/race manager/assign. If you're on Orbits, it truthfully does not matter where you save those files outside of you need to know where you saved those files. And I'll explain in just a minute why. So for the case of getting this training here started, I'm going to stick on Orbits. The other two pieces of information you're going to need is your IP address. Your IP address you can find in Orbits right here. Typically, most systems are only going to have one IP address, not the slurry of them that I currently have with the different connections that I have on this computer. So it'll just be that IP address. And then your port number is going to be 50,000. Pretty much religiously, it's going to be 50,000. If you ever think it's not going to be 50,000, I would rather you reach out and just double check with us of what it should be, because very, very, very super rare cases is it ever not 50,000. At that point, the only other piece here is the MRP Live code. Every single race night creates its own unique MRP Live code. So there are two routes to go about this. One, is very simply to just do a copy and paste, like some of you are probably familiar with from other systems. Very simple. If you are not familiar with that, if you're not comfortable with that, or you're just simply not sure, that's not a problem. We have another system in place for you, and that's this launch from web button right here. Hit launch from web. It starts it. As long as your IP address and the port are correct, it's going to go ahead and start it and connect it. So I'm connected now. When we bounce over to Westhold, I will show you guys where you can find the IP address inside of Westhold as well. But the transponder systems don't like being started at the same time, so I'm going to avoid that for the moment. And I realized that I skipped over it for a second, but you can download the MRP Live program right here, just a little bit further down the list. So I'm going to go ahead and move us back to lineups for a second. I'm going to hit MRP Live one more time. This Get Lineups button is what's going to kind of be your best friend from this point on. So after I set that first set of lineups for the night, I can set all of my hot lap or all of my practice and qualifying lineups, etc. I go ahead and hit Get Lineups. You can see that it did something here. In truth, you don't necessarily need to pay attention to what all it did. But at this point, you'll go into your Orbits install. In this case, I'm going to start here, and then we'll bounce over to Westhold and show you how that would work as well. So inside of Westhold, I'm going to go to the inside of Orbits, not Westhold. I apologize. I'm going to go to Registration, and then I'm going to hit this button where it says Import Groups and Runs. Hit that button. I'm going to browse, and this is where you need to know where you told it to save your files to. So if that's just a file, a folder on your desktop, or if there's a specific path that you want to go to, just make sure that wherever you tell it to save is somewhere you're going to remember. The first thing I'm going to import is groups. Finish. So you can see that it created that group of drivers just like you're used to seeing if you're used to Orbits. And then I'm going to go ahead and do an import one more time for the runs. In theory, you should only need to import groups once throughout the night, and then you'll do the runs after you create different lineups. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and check on my hot lap lineup there. I'm going to go to timing, and then I'm going to open up the track simulator. And I'm going to move this to a smaller portion of the screen real quick. There we go. So I'm going to start my timing. Pull that track simulator back open here, speed it up, and I'm going to go ahead and have it start. While this is running, I'll show you two other items real quick. One is that inside of that MRP Live tab, you'll be able to see that live timing as things are going. So if somebody's down in an office and wants to see what's on track or something like that, you could pull this up this way. As well, there is what we call the lap viewer. The lap viewer can be used in multiple different ways. One is that somewhere that has a lot of concession stands, they could put some TVs up near or around those concession stands and set this on those TVs so that people can see what is going on. Another place it could be used is putting it in front of your announcers so that they can see the different things that are happening on track, including seeing it in a few different other views. So like lap leaders and average lap time over the last, it's total average, positions gained, a best lap, or a running order. And I believe there's one more view in the app that is not in here, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to stop this file here. So I've stopped it at this point. Click OK. Everybody's got some lap times here, and that's what's important for this hot lap session. We're going to go back to our MRP on the web browser there, and we're going to go to our first result section. In our first result section here, we're just going to hit this big blue MRP Live button. Hitting that big blue MRP Live button allows me to see what files it is already stacked up in. So if something were to be not going as smoothly on that given race night, and you don't get to import everything right away, this will stack up a large number of the files and allow you to catch up as you can throughout the night if you have an intermission or something of that nature. And so all you'll need to do then, make sure you've got the right file and click import. It's going to pull everybody in. You can see everybody is in correct timed order, and we'll save that. So now in this case, if you are one of the tracks that runs qualifying based off of those hot lap times, I'm going to go ahead and do calculate qualifying from hot laps and click calculate. One of the things that we will help you guys get set up with as we go is this my lineups versus all lineups. All lineups just allows you to see every possible lineup we have for that race type. So this is every possible lineup we have for qualifying. My lineups is just a smaller version of that. So we will help you get it set up so that you only have a couple of options that you are regularly going to use to help limit any confusions or frustrations of grabbing the wrong thing. At this point, this is in order from fastest to slowest. If you're somewhere that does the hot laps, that's your qualifying order, but it goes in reverse so that slowest qualifies first, you can click on this lineup options, invert, and choose what number you're inverting by. This also applies well for those tracks that use a 1 second style rule to create that invert. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and invert by 10 just to show you how that happened. So if you saw before, 8:58 was our fastest qualifier. So he's now going, or fastest hot lap time, he's now going to qualify last. Again, save that lineup, go back to Orbits here, and we'll go to registration, import, browse for that run file, open, and next. As I realized that I never hit the Get Lineups button. You have to hit the Get Lineups button. Otherwise, your system doesn't get the file. So we'll import one more time, and I apologize for that mistake. And finish, and you'll now see the qualifying session is there and ready for you to run. I'm going to go ahead and start this and let this run one more time just so I can show you guys that import process once more. So we'll let this run and get them a couple of quick laps. All right, we'll give them just one more lap here. We're going to go ahead and finish this. There we go. So we're going to stop that. We'll stop our file, click OK. And then we'll come back here to the results. You'll see now that since we finished hot laps, it's going to push you down to the next non-completed race. So qualifying in this case, we'll hit MRP Live, and we'll pull in that correct file and click Save. If something were to ever go wrong and the MRP Live wasn't there, you've got a class that doesn't use transponders, something of that nature, you can manually enter those, as well as you can just pull in the raw transponder file if something ever was needed to be done that way. And you'll see those options there as well. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set our A feature lineup. So we're just going to do a calculate again, and we're going to calculate from qualifying. Click calculate. There's our 10 cars in the order that they qualified in. Again, you have the lineup options that's on every one of these screens. So you can do an invert if you just have a straight up invert. If you do some sort of a redraw, you can click on redraw. What you'll do then is type in however many cars you're going to redraw. In this case, I'm going to say 6 for the A feature and click next. And then you end up with 3 different options you can take here. You can just type in a number in each one of these boxes. So if you have them roll a die or pull spoons or hats or something on the front stretch, you can type those numbers in here. You could auto redraw them one at a time. So potentially you could have something kind of fun where you have kids come up to the stand, up to the tower or something, hit a button for them, or meet them somewhere and do something like that, or even the drivers themselves. Or if you're really running behind on time and you just absolutely need a lineup and you'll deal with any repercussions later, you can auto redraw everybody at the same time and click save. I am going to stop my orbits real quick here so that I can show you how this import would function on Westhold. So we're going to disconnect MRP Live here for just a second. I'm going to switch to make sure that I'm on the correct transponder program here again, and then I'm going to connect one more time. And it's telling me that there was no broadcast found because I never started a Westhold. So in Westhold, you will find your IP address right here. Again, I've got too many different connections on my computer, so it's a little bit funky, but typically you would just use whatever IP address is right here in the network broadcast control box. That's the only information you're grabbing from this box. Ignore 6000. Just worry about that IP address. And then you'll want to make sure that in the R monitor box that the network enable is checked underneath 50,000. Once that happens, you'll be able to connect. There we go. I've set my A feature lineup and I've already saved it, so I'm going to hit Get Lineups. As soon as I hit Get Lineups, it is right here for us to work from. And let me just show you that one more time because I did not clean this out from the last training I did with someone. So just for the sake of making sure everybody can see how I did that, it does not matter what screen you're on when you hit Get Lineups, but if you're on this assignment screen, it's going to look like nothing happened. It's not true. You just have to go off of it and go back to it. There's my A feature, as well as a competitor file for each class that I had put entries into. So there's my A. I'm going to go ahead and pre-start and run a very short A feature here of probably 1 or 2 laps just to be able to show you that the import function will function exactly the same way, no matter which transponder system you are on. We're just going to go ahead and stop that there just for the moment. Typically, you should not do what I just did there. In all cases, you want to make sure that you hit that finish flag or have it auto finish. There are triggers in MRP Live that are looking for that finish flag. And unfortunately, once in a while, if you don't do it correctly, you might notice that your import from your results does not go correctly. So basically, use the transponder system the right way and don't do what I did and use it incorrectly. Results, here we're on our A feature for that class. We'll click MRP Live and we're going to click import. That's all you're really doing throughout your entire race. If you have anybody that needs to be DNF'd, DNS'd, DQ, a black flag, or no passing points, you can do that right here. And you are all set and ready to roll to head towards your points and pay for the night. Points and pay, I personally typically tell people to not touch them until the absolute end of the night when you are done with all of your classes. and you know that tech is 100% done. If you are somewhere where you do not finalize anything until a later date, that's not a problem. You don't need to do it on the race night. You just need to make sure you do it within the timeline that is required by either your sanctioning body or what you've told your drivers it'll be done by. Especially if you don't pay that same night. But so when we're done with all the classes, we'll go to points and pay. We're just going to hit this big green add points and pay group button. At that point, in most cases, you don't necessarily need to put in a point group name, though any of you that are part of a sanctioning body, so in this case, for all of you that are doing NASCAR, you are going to want to put in a point group name because you're essentially going to hit the points button twice. As we get a little bit closer and or we do individual trainings here, I will show you that a little bit deeper because it does not show well on our demo here, but the basic principle works the same way. So in this case, I usually tell people put it in as weekly as one of their point group names and NASCAR or sanctioning body name or something as the secondary name when we get to that. The next part you would do is point schemes. All you're going to do is choose what point scheme you are using on that given case. So in this case, I'm just going to use the NASCAR scheme as the example here, which, why is it not in the list anymore? That is interesting. So we changed it at some point. All right, so I'm going to use IMCA modifieds for this minute. And then pay scheme, I will choose whatever pay scheme I am using on that given race night. These are all custom. It's not like it's a built-in thing or something like that. They're custom to your track. So in this case, I'm going to just use this demo one that I had built in there. If you chose to not track your payments through here for some unknown reason, and or when you've got a point more than once, so you don't need the pay more than once, you can use manual entry. It will automatically give everybody zeros. The important parts here is that you need to check which schedules it's applying to. In this case, it is only a part of one schedule. In most of your cases, as we get everything finalized and make sure we have everybody set up and ready to roll with the NASCAR stuff correctly, you will notice that your events are going to show not only on your schedule, but on a NASCAR national schedule. And so if you are using the NASCAR points as your weekly points, you will only need to do that once. You can choose to go to both schedules. If your weekly points are different than the NASCAR schedules, that's where you'll need to do it twice. Once to your weekly using your point scheme, and once to the NASCAR scheme using the NASCAR scheme. The NASCAR scheme is a global scheme that we will add for all of you and help you out with that. It'll be very, very quick and easy. And then if you have an owner's championship or some sort of a team championship, if you have a team championship, get with us, we'll help you. But if you have an owner's championship, we will apply that there. Yeah, go ahead, Ross.
Sorry to interrupt, Dakota. With the NASCAR stuff, those, as long as you put in results, including the lineup, those points will actually be calculated by the sanctioning body themselves. So when it comes to the point standings, you only need to keep track of your weekly point standings. We do have other sanctioning bodies, so if you co-sanction anything else, you may need to add points if you have an IMCA event or what have you. But the NASCAR stuff, and I apologize, Dakota, for not clarifying that earlier, but the NASCAR stuff, they'll actually calculate that on the sanction side. So again, just to reiterate, your points, you'll only need to calculate just the track points if you're keeping those. Everything else, as long as you put in your lineups and results, the sanctioning body will take care of the rest.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification there, Ross. And I do apologize for not having that straight the right way the first time. So really, you won't have to worry about the point group name. Just focus on, making sure that you collect the correct scheme and the correct pay scheme. The other piece in this screen that you'll want to pay attention to is if you have anybody that you're taking away their points or pay for any set of reasons, you can do that right here with these check marks. And then the other piece that becomes important if you are taking away somebody's points or pay, is you need to know what your track rules are on whether everybody else moves up a position or if that position simply no longer exists. So if third place got DQ'd, does fourth become third, or does third place just no longer exist? Every track does it a little bit differently. So just pay attention to that. If you do it where everybody moves up, that'll be these two check boxes right here. If you do it where the position does not exist, just uncheck the boxes next to that person. and then we'll just click add. This here is going to be the last screen that you're really, well, second to last screen that you're ever really going to look at on a race night. The first thing here is these are your point and pay totals. So if you have a scheme or a track point setup where people get pointed out for every race that they have been in throughout the night, so qualifying, heat races, features, etc., this becomes very important so you can take a quick look and see if something looks off, like they seemingly have way more points than anybody else for some reason, or you're seeing that somebody doesn't have enough points. And then you can look through by race and see who got what points and what pay for each position in each race. And that's how that's all broken down there for you. That's all set up via the schemes. Again, the schemes are custom to your track, and we will help you with getting that stuff set up. It is not difficult, and typically we'll try and walk through with you guys as we're helping you get it set up. But for the moment, just know that that can be custom or is custom, and we will help you there. So once you are comfortable that your points and pay look correct, the last thing you're going to want to do is hit create payments. I beg and I plead to only hit create payments one time. So make sure that everything is right before you hit that create payments. Once you hit create payments, you'll jump over here and you can mark what you're paying people. So right now, the default on this profile is set to cash. If you are going to be printing checks, you'll want to make sure that everybody is set to a check. You can change the default overall type right here. We're going to save those changes real quick. And you can move everybody to one or another style, and you can save that as a default or not. So everybody is set for a check, and we'll save. When you do that, you'll hit create checks if you're going to be printing checks through us. Pretty simple process at that point, just entering your original or your starting check number, mark that you understand it's valid pay, and click create. It's going to open up another screen for you to print from with all the corrected information. If you are looking for a quick payout report, you can do that here in this print button. That's the report. It opens up a quick report for you to pay, whether you need to hand that to your office manager or if you want to have drivers sign on it, etc. Realistically, that is what we were hoping to cover tonight, and to make sure that we have you guys in a good place moving forward. On our next set of sessions, we'll be moving into the points and pay a little bit deeper, as well as the different schemes, how those schemes are entered, the 1099 report for yearly pay, which is what all of this boils back to, and then other event reports that are specific to those events. For the moment, just because I want to make sure I hit on this with you guys for just a second, since it ties to the entry list directly, inside of any screen in race management, you'll notice there's these other buttons at the top. Inside of reports, the third one down is your transponder list. I feel like it's a very important report that you want to know that is there, because inevitably I always have one or two drivers that don't bring a transponder back. This just gives you a report to find those transponders. So the way I personally handle it is I double click on rented here, and that moves all of my rentals to the top, so I know who I need to go chase down and make sure I've got those transponders. At this point, we're kind of coming up towards the end of what the session timeline is supposed to be tonight. Does anybody have any specific questions they would like to go over? Feel free to just raise your hand and kind of jump out. We'll kind of go through anything anybody's got. For Kingsport there on the check portion, if you are using QuickBooks desktop version, not QuickBooks Online, yes, you can hit this QuickBooks export. You'll put in the correct bank account and expense account numbers, and then you can download that file and import it straight into the QuickBooks desktop version only. QuickBooks Online does not have an import function in order to do that. So that would need to be entered manually if you're on QuickBooks Online. Did anybody else have any questions they would like to go over or anything of that nature? More than happy to do so. We've got a little bit of time here and always happy to help you guys out. All right, if nobody has anything else that they would like to go over, I am going to throw our support email here in the chat just so that everybody has it. And that is just support@myracepass.com. That email there specifically, Austin and myself are consistently, that is basically our entire job, is to make sure that that inbox is taken care of and follow up with you driver or you tracks and series, or in general. If one of us cannot get to it, there are quite a few other team members that do have access to that and or monitor different parts of it or at different times. So we're always there trying to make sure that we have make sure you guys are taken care of. I thank everybody for being here tonight and taking a little bit of time with everybody. Oh, and as Ross just threw in the chat there, I apologize that I didn't hit that before. mrphelp.com, mrphelp.com. That is a link to our help center. If there's anything that you are a little bit unsure of, but you don't necessarily want to reach out or think you can find the answer quicker and easier on your own there, we are happy for you to go ahead and do that. Austin spends a boatload of time making sure that that is accurate and up-to-date information for you guys. And it is very easy to sort through and see what is available to you. So my version will not open correctly there. Give me 1 second here because of the screen I was in. This is what it would open like. And you can just search for the information you're looking for, or just look through these categories that we've tried to create to make fairly simple for you, such as this promoters section. If it's not right here at the top, just click all, and there is a boatload of different articles that go over all the different pieces that may apply to you. If you would like to schedule an individual track training at any point, you can do so at mrp walkthrough, THROUGH.com. And we'll throw that in the chat there as well. Yep, Ross just did. We'll be more than happy to get with you. So that is a Calendly link. You'll be able to jump in there, pick what time works best for you, and we will find one of the two of us, Austin or myself, will sit there and go through everything with you more individually, one-on-one, and make sure we've got you set up and taken care of. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, just a couple things here. First of all, nice job, Dakota. As everyone on here probably noticed by now that neither one of us are fans of public speaking, so thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I just want to mention real quick that there is the sandbox out there as well. Dakota, if you want to just show them where that's at.
Absolutely.
So this is a tool that we have available for you guys. If there's any questions or you want to try something out, but you're not quite sure, you don't want to screw something up, the sandbox is out there for you to basically do just that. You can do whatever you like in here on your dashboard. Go to the bottom, click on sandbox. That'll open up, and it's basically a copy of everything that's out there in production, but it's not made public. So if there's something that you want to, like I said, try out, or a different lineup, or this, that, or the other thing, just to learn the system better, use that sandbox to your advantage to do that. The only thing that you can't do in the sandbox, unfortunately, is connect to MRP Live. Everything else is theirs, from lineups to results, points, payout, everything else in the sandbox. And that does get refreshed every Monday morning. So if there's something that you did on Saturday and you want to go back and see how it would have played out if you did it differently, it will be there for you on Monday morning. Likewise, if you put something in there and you're working on it on a Thursday or Friday, make sure and wrap it up, because it will be gone and refreshed with what's in production on Monday morning. But other than that, yeah, I can't thank you guys enough for hopping on here. Be sure to check out our other YouTube videos. And we do have some other webinars obviously coming up as well. You're more than welcome to join as many of those as you would like to. I think that's all I wanted to touch on here at the end. If there's any other questions, we'd be more than happy to answer those for you guys.